This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Well, it's inevitable. It happens in almost every high-profile court case, especially murder cases. Horrible person goes to court. Horrible person is found guilty. Horrible person goes to prison for the rest of their life. And surprise! Love letters start showing up in the mail from random women all over the place. They just can't get enough of these killers. We've been seeing it with Kohberger, and we've talked about it there. Alec Murdaugh, now the latest one to have adoring fans reaching out and looking for a little bit of love, if you will. Shavaun Scott is joining us. She's a psychotherapist and author. Shavaun, let's speak to the core of this. What the hell is going through someone's mind when they think, I'm going to send this murderer who I've never met in my entire life a correspondence, and let's make it romantic as well.
Yeah, it's a desperate need for attention, I think, for women who do that. It's a very common syndrome. We've seen it a lot. We'll probably be seeing it forever. What a way to feel important, right? I mean, here this guy is locked up. He has nothing to do with hours and hours of his time other than read mail that comes in, and I assume that he responds. And it's, you know, guys in prison will become incredibly, what would we say? They'll give a lot of attention to perhaps a woman that if they were on the outside, this is not a person they would ever care about or connect with. But because they're in a place of desperate neediness, if they start getting mail from a woman who's desperately needy and wants to feel special and wants to feel important, you know, they respond. And these are often the jailhouse marriages that we see, or these long-term relationships. And it's incredibly sad, I think, on the woman's side, that this is where you have to go in order to feel special and important. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely another pattern.
Is it something to do with the celebrity on cases like this? I would imagine, obviously, the more well-known the case, the more likely you're going to get letters from almost anywhere. But but is it solely, exclusively that? Or are these sort of relationships, if you will, do people seek them out with cases that are not, so high profile?
Yeah, definitely. I've known women in the past who got involved with religious groups, who did prison ministries, and just went in and spent time with your average everyday criminal, not a famous murderer, but just somebody else who's committed some kind of crime and incarcerated. And you find those kind of love bonds happening all the time. And that's certainly not to say everybody who's involved in that sort of thing goes that direction, but it's not uncommon.
Obviously, it seems insanely unhealthy for the woman who's doing that, who's writing the letter, or the male if you're writing the letter on the outside into somebody that is obviously a criminal, but you don't know that you're seeking that sort of attention from. Unhealthy there. What about to the criminal themselves, the ones that are in there receiving the letter? Is this something, and it's in a weird way, is this healthy for them? Is this good for them to be communicating with somebody on the outside in this sort of way?
Well, I'm sure it makes them feel better. It boosts their sense of, somebody cares about me. I'm not such a bad guy because look at this woman, who cares about me so much. So I'm sure it makes them feel better. Mm-hmm. Is it healthy? Probably we can't say it is, because it just gives them a chance usually to further their skills at conning, and to mislead. And a lot of times they're proclaiming that they're innocent when we know they weren't innocent. And then that serves the woman's need to feel like I'm rescuing this poor person, I'm helping him in some way. So the whole thing is pretty sick and twisted. But does it make them feel better? Does it make the guy feel better? Yeah, he probably gets a big ego boost out of it, as does the woman, particularly if it's a notorious criminal. It makes her feel very important.
Should there be any sort of safeguards in place with things like this, with these sort of letters going and coming from jails? Or is it just more so looked at this as a human right? You have the right to communicate with people like this, and we're not going to step in the way, no matter how unhealthy it may or may not be.
Yeah, I guess, in our society with all the rights we have, we probably can't keep people from having these kind of communications. But, if it were someone in my family, I would sure love to see it discouraged, if I had a relative who was doing this. I did actually know when I was in college many years ago, I did know a young woman who went out and was trying to do a one-woman prison ministry. And I really tried to talk her out of it. And she did eventually stop because she fell in love with some guy who got out of prison and then immediately went back to robbing liquor stores. I mean, literally the day he got out. And she was convinced that the power of her love was going to set him straight. And so fortunately, she was young enough that she did learn and she knocked it off. But the potential for danger, a lot of times when these things happen, the guy gets out, moves in with the woman immediately, and she ends up being victimized or even murdered by him.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Shavaun Scott, thank you so much for your insights into all of that. Hopefully, you were sitting there debating whether or not it was appropriate to write the letter. Put the pen down. Now that you've heard that, we changed a life or two, didn't we? Be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any breaking updates or discussions on the cases we're following for you right here. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.